Welcome back to another episode of That's Business. Today's guest, Samantha Barash, is a Detroit-based registered dietitian, wellness leader, and community cultivator. Sam, thank you so much for joining the podcast. We have a lot of good things to talk about today. When I met you, you're definitely someone like you're on this wellness journey. You bring these beautiful mental health professionals together. So I got to ask, growing up, were you always into health and wellness, or how did we get to where we are today?
Ooh, great question. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and chat. Ooh, that's a loaded question. Right? There's like the super long answer, and then there's the more condensed versions. I'll give you a little something maybe in between.
Yeah.
I, at a young age, really was into nutrition and into working out. And at one point, I remember being like a little middle schooler and wanting to own a gym one day. So it feels like I've always been on the track to become a dietitian. It wasn't always in a healthy way, though. It was very much driven by this idea of safety surrounding what I looked like and wanting to really just set myself up for what would feel like a more accepted or safer adulthood and future if I could shrink myself and to have a career where I could guarantee that I was able to look a certain way and that I could also help other people look a certain way.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so loaded, right? And I look back on it and that younger version of me had no idea what I am saying now. It's with insight, I'm able to look back and realize what was happening. And going into high school and college, I very much took what should have been a more neutral, balanced relationship with food and health and nutrition. And I liked to take it way overboard, right? And sometimes I see this in a lot of other perfectionists wanting to have what might be considered the perfect body, or this pressure that, okay, if I'm a dietitian, then I have to look like I'm a dietitian, right? I have to portray that. So it became very obsessive and extremely unhealthy. And I'm lucky that soon after coming into the field, I was able to come out of that and I was able to recognize okay, this isn't actually health. And we don't actually know how to help people lose weight. And that kind of guided me into wanting to find a career or a space in which I could practice these beliefs and help other people find true health and work through their own body image struggles so that they can find what balanced nutrition and gentle nutrition really looks like.
That's amazing. So at what point, if you feel comfortable answering this, at what point did you kind of identify oh, I need to change my thought patterns, or being a dietitian is not what you initially thought because there's so much more to it?
It really took me being in my career as a dietitian to realize okay, we're really just not talking about food in helpful ways anymore. If you meet a group of dietitians, you'll probably find that we are the least diety. We are the most open to different foods. There used to be ongoing jokes when I spent more time with my dietitian colleagues in different healthcare settings of that's the only place sometimes where it feels like no one's talking about a diet or no one's talking or demoralizing food. We just come from this practice of food is food, and it can be really medicinal. And a lot of times it's just something beautiful to nourish our bodies. And we can see the different aspects of it that encompass health in different ways. That's not just physical health, right? So it's hard to say really where it transitioned for me, but ultimately having a real awakening with myself prior to that of okay, having these rigid rules around food and health and working out, it's not actually healthy, and I got to address this.
Absolutely. And something that I've talked with you about that just blew my mind. We don't have to call it specific diets, but why do you feel these fad diets, or, whether it's keto, whether it's low carb, no carb? I mean, it's so hard to keep up with what's the newest, latest, and greatest. So why do you feel those don't work long term, or what's kind of the psychology behind those not working out in the long run?
Yeah. Feels like all of those really come back to the main goal being restriction and eating less than. And when we're doing it from that mentality, it's not in a way of loving and nourishing our body, it's in a way of shrinking our body, or the goal is to shrink our body, right? And I really just come back to this philosophy that if we're doing that in an act of shame or disapproval or disgust, even, that isn't motivating for consistency, right? Also, when we're doing those diets, they're not sustainable because our body wants food. I mean,
Yes.
our body will continue to guide us back to food. And that's why diets don't work, is because they want to be nourished. And I think a lot of the misconception comes back to that is healthy and eating less is healthy and controlling our intake is healthy, when really in my work, I really want to help people optimize their nutrition and what can they add and how can they make it more beautiful of a plate and nutritious without limiting themselves. And when we do that and we do it from a place of like love and care, and because we want to take care of ourselves, it's a lot more sustaining because we want to keep doing it because it feels good, right?
No, it absolutely does. And I think it's interesting because there is like so much psychology behind this and there's so many factors. So, how do you typically approach working with a new client, or what differentiates you from other dietitians?
Great question. I really want to know the why behind everything. I believe that we don't just not stick to things. We don't just not care about our bodies. We don't just not care about health or nutrition. Like there's always a why behind our behaviors. And like that's what I want to understand. So the more that I can dig deep into understanding one's like history with food, what food was like growing up, how their role models or parents or guardians talked about food in the household, and how that may or may not have influenced how food shows up in their current life. Like, I want to get deep into that, knowing that once we're able to dig into that and uncover what's going on there, then we can really uncover what that person wants for their own nutrition journey and their own health in a way that's really empowering and fun.
No, that's awesome. I know some people hear the word dietitian, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to do it." Like you said, I don't care, or it doesn't bother me, whatever. So, what do you typically say to people that are all like, "Oh, you're not going to tell me what to do," if they, you're meeting them at a networking event, or I'm sure this has happened to you. So, what do you kind of typically say in those situations?
Yeah, great question. I'm not going to tell you what to do, right? I'm not. I think the most beautiful thing about the work that I get to do with clients is I'm not telling them how or what they should be doing, but more so like sitting in the passenger seat and helping them listen and understand what their body is asking for. So the goal is in our work together, I don't have all the answers because I don't know one's body, right? But there's so much mixed messaging and ideas. And if we Google something, it'll give us like 18 different contradicting answers when it comes to nutrition, that it makes people just really, really confused. And so the goal of my work with a client is never to tell them what they should or shouldn't be doing, but help them work through all of the stuff that makes it hard for them to listen to their bodies, to understand what their bodies are asking for. And I know that a lot of times when I say that, people are like, well, if I listened to what my body was telling me, I would just eat Oreos and cookies and bread all day. And my argument to that is no, like intuitively, that's not what your body's going to ask for. But we have so many mixed messaging up in our brain that it makes us believe that that's what we're constantly going to be guided towards. But that's not true intuitive eating. And that's not like a balanced, nutritious way of feeling really good in our bodies. And so I feel like I always have to give that disclaimer because it really just goes deep into not trusting our bodies, especially in like today's society. And so the more that I can work with someone to like come back into their body and trust what their body is telling them and how their body feels, like that's the true work. you shouldn't have to be working with me long term. Like you should be just learning the skills so that you don't have to work with anyone long term, or you're not going to become subject to the next fad or the next diet that comes out because you truly believe and trust your body and what it's asking for.
So I love the concept of intuitive eating, and I feel like a lot of people don't understand what that looks like. So can you share with us a little more detail of when someone says, oh, well, my body just wants the Oreos, the cookies, the junk food, we'll say, what does intuitive eating mean? And what does that look like for someone who's like, yeah, I have not a clue what that means?
Intuitive eating is a practice of fueling our body so that we're listening to our internal cues versus the external diet rules in our brain.
Ooh.
So, as simply as I can put it, if we think back to like a toddler who's feeding themselves, right? And if we watch a toddler eat, we might notice that some days they really love eating bread and pasta. And then there's other days where maybe all they want is fruit. And some days they're super hungry and some days they're not, right? Like it can kind of be a mixed bag. Typically at that age, they don't really have the understanding of cookies or candy or cake as being like exciting or like highly desirable food, right? They are looking at food as morally equivalent. What happens, and so like they're being like true intuitive eaters, like they're listening to their body, they're trusting what their body needs. And typically as adults and as parents, we look at that and we're like, they got it covered. Like they know what they need. Don't stress about it. It's not a big deal. Like one day, one meal isn't going to make or break their health, right? Now, something that happens is they become a certain age where that trust is taken away from them, right? Someone else knows how much they need to eat. Someone else knows what they need to be eating. Those like messages or ideas start to be told to us, and it really starts to build that distrust in our bodies, right? That may or may not look like maybe glorifying certain foods or being really excited when like there's a cookie on the table or there's candy in the house. I like to say that intuitively, like those wouldn't be exciting things unless people show us that those are supposed to be exciting things, right? So we learn as we get older how to essentially stop being intuitive eaters because of our society and the messages that we're told. So the work that I'm doing with clients is trying to really just like unlearn all of that work, really just unpacking all of those belief systems around food and our bodies, health, our weight, and allowing people to feed themselves in a way that feels good. And even just uncovering like, what does feeling good look like? That starts with just talking about, what does a balanced meal look like? How can we incorporate different snacks throughout our day that feel really yummy and nourishing? How can we make sure that we understand what hunger feels like in our body, what fullness feels like in our body, understanding what a day of eating looks like, what our movement looks like. So it's super individualized. It's never going to be the same thing for every person, every body, but really just working together to figure out like, okay, what does intuitive eating look like for me?
That reference to being a toddler is so accurate because it's so true. Or if you grew up in a household that was, you're not leaving the table until your plate's finished, or, oh, I really don't want to eat this, or all of that. And I love the point about listening to your body because you don't realize how uncomfortable you are. And we had talked about this. I mean, for those of you that may not know, I've had my gallbladder removed. I've been on you have gluten issues, and it really wasn't. And it's just been a whole food journey for me the last year. But it's true because when you get so in the concept of, oh, I'm used to this is how I just feel every day. And then you stop feeling that way every day. I was like, my mind was blown. It was like a whole new life. So I think the work you're doing is so imperative for people to, okay, sit down for 2 seconds and how's your body feel after that? Or if you're not hungry, don't force it just because it's 6 o'clock. I mean, that's awesome. That's so great. So I know this could be its own podcast of like how to effectively, have your own nutrition, and it depends per person. But What are some of the common myths in your industry that you like to dispel or you disagree with? Give us a little insight on that.
Ooh, I think a common myth that I'd like to dispel is that we know how healthy someone is by looking at them.
Yes.
Something that I see show up with clients time and time again is feeling really confused by their body maybe not looking the way that they believe it should look or how they want it to look, and feeling really disconnected from that, and therefore unable to make nutritious, healthy behavior changes around that, not knowing if how that's going to show up or not show up externally on their bodies. So, doing a lot of education on how flawed BMI is and how our bodies can and are incredibly healthy in many different sizes is really fun work and really empowers people to be able to nourish themselves without feeling that pressure of like, well, what's the point of taking care of myself if working out, feeding myself healthy, nutritious foods, if I'm not going to lose weight? That can be really limiting for people. And so being able to provide that education and dispelling that myth is super important in this work.
No, I went to a event from Seed magazine called like Health Scene, and that's what they were talking about. Is there's no proof that you could look at someone and guarantee that they're healthy just from looking at them or not healthy. So that's been my Google wormhole of just understanding that, because that's so true. So love that you bring it up.
Yeah.
As we transition, because there are other pieces of you that you own the Practice Collective, which it's so incredible what you do. But tell us about the Practice Collective. What is that? Where was the idea from? And what's that look like today?
So I started the Practice Collective in 2023 because I wanted a space to start to see clients in person. At this point, I had been primarily virtual since 2020. And I was getting a little antsy at home, and the opportunity came up of a space that was available. What came with the space, though, was a few more offices than I needed. And the idea came about of, hey, I wonder if other people would be interested in sharing this office with me. And so I did some Googling and exploring of, is this a thing? And I found a incredible business owner out in Atlanta who has the exact same model, and she offered business coaching surrounding it. And so I consulted with her on, okay, how can I do this here in Detroit? As a dietitian, I primarily get my clients through referrals from other mental health providers. So it really just made sense to be able to have a space for myself and my clients, but also for other providers in the community to be able to connect, support each other. Doing this work is lonely, and especially as like solopreneurs, when we don't have other people to connect with or to talk through things with, it's really just nice to have another clinician down the hall that might be seeing clients too that day that you can connect with at the end of the day or in between clients. And I think it just helps with longevity in this space and in this work. We opened in September of 2023, and I love it. I often say that I am incredibly, I overthink things. I'm very analytical in making my decisions, especially as an entrepreneur. And this one, it just happened, right? And I don't really know how it happened or exactly why at that time. And now that it's been open for a year and a half, I'm like, yeah, it totally makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Right.
Glad I followed my gut. Feels really good. It's a really nice way of like offsetting the work that I do as a dietitian too. And it allows me to continue to build community, which feels really good and really aligned.
Well, and I think when you do the work or as a solopreneur or even what you're doing, it's a vulnerable process. I mean, I can only imagine that your sessions sometimes turn into therapy because you're asking people why they have these belief systems. And I think we always forget about the person doing the work. of how are you feeling after, 8 to 10 clients a day or something crazy. And you're like, I'm freaking drained. Like, this is a lot. So the space you've created is incredible to remember those people that often, the solopreneurs that get left out in those situations. And I love that it's an office feel without, you having to be in a big corporation. Cause I know I miss that about corporate, of just like, I could go down the hall and, BS with someone, or just, I'm having a rough day. Like, I need a pep talk. And that's awesome. So
Sure.
Now, where do you see the Practice Collective kind of taking off, or where do you hope it goes? And I know that's a loaded question, but I have to know.
I would love to see this in more cities. We have our office in Southfield. I would love to bring this to Detroit. I would love to hopefully expand it across Michigan one day. It's really fun. Like you said, like it just feels values aligned, and building community and having other people who just get it. It helps me be able to do the work longer, right? And I want that to be the same for other people too.
Right, exactly. As we wrap this up, you've shed so much light. And again, if you want to follow Sam, head to the show notes. But what advice do you have for listeners?
Ooh, business advice, personal advice?
Open-ended question.
All right. I think there's this idea around nutrition and health that maybe we don't have enough willpower, or like we don't have enough dedication or passion to be able to stick to something when it comes to nutrition or diet or health. And I love to debunk that for people by helping them see the other areas of their life where they are really dedicated and they do have a lot of self-dedication and passion. And often that allows them to see that maybe not sticking to a certain diet or a certain way of eating is not a personality flaw, but more so just not how they're meant to take care of themselves. And I see that invites them to find healthier behaviors that do feel more supportive. And it takes away that shame. And we don't make new changes. We don't take care of ourselves. We don't change things because of shame. Shame does not work, right? And so when we're able to take that away and understand that, maybe this isn't a personal flaw, and maybe my body is just asking for more nutrition or a different way of fueling myself, and that's okay too.
Oh, that's amazing. So if you want to work with Sam, which you all should, head to the show notes, reach out to her, and tune in again next week for another episode of That's Business.
If you're looking for a career change and you're not sure where to start, the Resume Rescue can help. Sure, there's no such thing as the perfect fit for everyone, but here at the Resume Rescue, we're on a mission to find the perfect solution for you. Whether it's changing careers, updating a resume, learning LinkedIn, or practicing interviewing, we have you covered. Find us online at theresumerescue.com and find all of our contact info in our show notes.